the series called Meet a Parliamentarian. So to get started, I'm going to invite Dr. Dorothy Lucks to offer us her opening remarks, and then we will hear from our parliamentarian. And as you listen, in order to make sure that the presentation is smooth, please keep yourself on mute so that we can have a nice audio session as well. So let me turn it over to Dr. Dorothy Lucks. Dr. Lucks is the Executive Director of SDG Global and an experienced consultant with 20 years experience. And at this time, she is the IOCE Board Secretary, that's the International Organization for Cooperation and Evaluation, and also a member of the EVAL Partners Executive Committee and co-chair of the recently formed EVALSDGs network. So Dorothy, over to you.
Thank you, Tessie. And my role at this stage of the webinar is just to offer a very warm welcome to everybody. We thank you for joining us. I know that there are people from all over the globe at different times of the day, so instead of saying good morning, good evening, we'll just say good day to everybody and hope it is a good day. And we do welcome you on behalf of the IOCE and EVAL Partners, and we thank the Global Parliamentarians Forum for organising this, which is the second in a series of 10 webinars, Meet a Parliamentarian, which is really highlighting the important role that policymakers in each country play in relation to developing evaluation systems and evaluation capacity, and of course evaluation results. And in this case series, of course, we're focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals. So welcome to you all, and I'll hand back to Tessie.
Thank you, Dorothy. I will now introduce our wonderful parliamentarian today, but before I do that, I wanted to suggest that during the presentation, if you have questions and also during the discussion, please type your questions on the chat on the left so that we can combine the questions and have a nice conversation after the presentations. So it is now my pleasure and honor to introduce Honorable Natalia Nikitenko, Member of Parliament of Kyrgyzstan. She's also the steering committee member of GPFE and a representative to the EVALSDGs network. And Ms. Nikitenko is also chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights in Kyrgyzstan. So it is our pleasure, my pleasure, to introduce to you Natalia, and please, Natalia, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and hello, everyone. Very good time of the day to everyone. And today, you know, we are here in Kyrgyzstan, in our small but very proud country and a member of the big family of United Nations. So I'm very pleased to share our experience, our vision, and ideas about sustainable development goals, and just to tell what we're doing here in Kyrgyzstan, trying to localize, implement them, make them alive in our country, within our national strategies, sectoral strategies, and also what should be the role of the Parliament in this process. And starting from our country, here you see the information about us, but I would like to pay your attention to the assessment of the programs in achieving the MDGs in the Kyrgyz Republic. This is just to show you, to give the idea where we are, because to start telling about the SDGs and the programs, we did a kind of homework trying to analyze how good or bad we were in implementing the MDGs, what we did good, what our lessons learned. And if to say about the implementation of MDG in the Kyrgyz Republic, so you can see that the presentation of them in the strategic programs, unfortunately, was not as good as we would like. So it took pretty much time to form the necessary committee under the Vice Prime Minister to promote MDG in the strategic sectoral program. It took also a while to organize intersectoral approach, but unfortunately it also wasn't very widely used. And state budgeting also was not very much linked with MDG. So we learned our lessons, and we had very wide national consultations on the MDG and nowadays on the SDG, what we should do together, the government, the parliament, the civil society, from the lessons that we learned and how we should be more efficient in that. So telling about the now, what are the outcomes by today regarding the transition from MDG to SDG at the national level? Today we have already conducted a number of different national consultations on the development agenda. Definitely we understand that it's very important that all the stakeholders should be involved in the discussion process. How to localize SDG, how they should work, what should be the indicators, and to have this platform for discussion. The new committee was organized, Committee on Mechanisms to Introduce SDG. This is chaired by the Prime Minister now, and I think this is one of the very important, crucial issues, because this committee, chaired by the Prime Minister, this time includes also the members of the Parliament, UN agencies, respective national partners, representatives of experts in civil society. And what we're doing now, we're working with the Parliament, I mean, with the government, within this committee, on the roadmap on the SDGs adaptation. Definitely it's a long way process, but we will start to some analysis how the local national strategic programs that we have now in our country, how they're linked with SDG, and where we are, how we should better implement the SDGs in the national agenda and make them working. So if to tell briefly about our system of responsible institution for the formation of the strategic development agenda, we have the main key document of strategic level that organizes the vision, let's say the future vector of development for our country. This is the National Strategy for Sustainable Development. That expires, by the way, next year, 2017. But this strategy, this was developed based on the National Council on Sustainable Development of the Kyrgyz Republic, chaired by the President. And this council also includes the Speaker of the Parliament, leaders of political fractions, Prime Minister, Chair of the Supreme Court, etc. So very important decision makers, and also the civil society representatives. And the main idea of this council is to develop and formulate a strategic level document. So it's kind of collaborative documents, vision for the country. We have another program, which is operational program for the National Sustainable Development Strategy. This is the program for implementation of the National Sustainable Development Strategy that also expires next year. This is developed and based on the government. And also it's a high level of decision makers and stakeholders was involved in the development of this strategy, together with international partners and different stakeholders. So these two basic documents, they are strategy for our country, and all sectoral programs, they are more or less linked, and they should be linked better in the future, as I think. But what is the role of the parliament here? You know, the Kyrgyz Republic has the parliamentary democracy. In 2010, we switched from presidential form of governance to the parliamentary. So the parliament has key functions, for example, oversight under the government, dismiss the government, the prime minister, cabinet of minister, and also appoint to the position the prime minister. We have coalitional government. And definitely the government presents the reports to the Parliament, to the committees. Of course, we have the legislation, budgeting functions, so this is the key functions of any parliament, let's say, and also the strong oversight function that our committees have allows us to work very closely with the government. So the parliament, in one hand, was involved, the leadership of the parliament, in the development of the strategic sustainable development program. On the other hand, it has the control and oversight functions under the government on the program of implementation of the national strategy. This is very important and very good position to promote the agenda of SDG for future, to request that the indicators, that the ideas should be linked very seriously with strategic and operational programs. So the parliament in our country, in our realities, has all those very wide and strong functions. May I ask the next slide, please? Yes, and here, what we started with, we tried to analyze how strongly the national strategy for development of the country and the operational strategy, so our national sustainable development strategy you see in blue, and government program on sustainable development with operational strategy in brown, how their tasks are linked with SDGs targets. So starting from this analysis, we found out that most of the tasks from our strategic and the operational programs, they are linked pretty good with the SDGs. And this is despite that these programs, they were developed in 2012 and 2013, and they expire next year. So here on the left side, you see the zero here, the zero coefficient, means that there is no linkage between the SDG and the local strategic programs. One, this means that there is some linkage, and two is the 100% linkage, let's say, compatibility. So you see in our realities we have coefficient average more than 1. So it's average compatibility with the SDG. And having this picture in our mind, we come up with the next ideas and the steps. So one of the challenges and threats from my point of view for SDG, that in some countries, and we might not be exclusion taking into account the MDG experience, that SDG should be not just formally, but they should be really nationally shared. It shouldn't be the formal shared, by the group of decision makers of any level, for example, government or presidential level, but it should be really serious involvement of all partners if we want that SDG really work on national level. So it's the long way process to promote the SDG agenda, to localize and to set up the monitoring and evaluation system for that. So there should be a number of preconditions for this very ambitious but very important goal from my point of view. Really nationalization of SDG. So the precondition first is definitely the leadership on SDG promotion on national level. There should be voices in different sectors, in the parliament, in the government, on local level authorities, in the society. Definitely there should be real ownership on different levels. So it's prioritization of SDGs, system of indicators developed and localized, and development of national strategies SDG based. And it's very important to have the efficient strategy planning, governmental management system, available governance with implementation of efficient monitoring and evaluation system. It's important precondition. State and local budgeting linked to SDG, that would be very good. For our realities, it's the long-term goal, I would say, but we're coming to the program budgeting, and we actually think it should be one of the preconditions to localize SDG. There should be proper legal framework and definitely linkage between different levels, local, national, sub-national, regional, and global levels. Intersectoral approach and collaboration I already mentioned. From my point of view, it's one of the very serious preconditions, that allows SDG to be better shared, understood, and working in practice. But also there might be a number of challenges that we understand. I mentioned about formal approach. It might be, we are coming to the real ownership, but it takes time. Changing political situation and changing the country priorities. Another is a poor leadership and lack of knowledge and active part of some key stakeholders. For example, the parliament is missing, or civil society voices are not here, local authorities. The system will be hardly fully owned by country. And also poor system of state management, linkage with local, subnational, regional levels, poor capacity for SDG implementation, human capacity methodology, lack of legal framework, and poor intersectoral collaboration. All those challenges, they might be faced, and we take them into account and trying to develop the roadmap, keeping in mind how to overcome these challenges, what we should do to make the process of localization, nationalization of SDG more efficient. And the role of the parliament in all those processes to overcome the challenges, to form the necessary preconditions is very important, I believe. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the role of parliament members is very important, and there is a number of tools. For example, parliamentarians have the real opportunities to raise the agenda of SDG, to promote, and also through the oversight and control function, the parliament members have a tool include the necessary indicators in the reporting. For example, we adopted last month the format for the Prime Minister report to the Parliament. And we included a number of different indicators that the Parliament requests from the Prime Minister from the government's report. This is one of the opportunities that we may use to follow the process, to make sure that SDGs indicators are in the agenda, and to have them like checking the progress, let's say. We also have a number of different tools to organize the involvement of stakeholders, collaboration, and definitely the big role of the Parliament is to set up and, let's say, organize the better monitoring and evaluation system, encourage the government to work and to build on efficient planning and monitoring and evaluation system. Next slide, please. So, I know I don't have very much time, and let me just briefly conclude the realities of Kyrgyzstan. So, by now, by today, we set up pretty good partnership. I mean, some parliament members, parliamentary committees, and the groups in the government that are responsible for SDG development, working on the roadmap. So the MDG lessons learned in our country. So we set up some foundation to ensure transition to SDG in Kyrgyzstan. And we understand that we need to pay more attention on cross-sectoral collaboration and involvement of many stakeholders. Existing development policy papers, to some extent, as we see, reflected the SDG goals. But our goal that the new papers on strategic development that are being developed right now, they should be heavily based on SDG, and also in the system of monitoring and evaluation, also the indicators should be used. The strategic planning and efficient governance needs to be in the focus. And to do so, we organized the new legislation, amendments to the legislation about strategic planning that organizes the system, how the strategic documents on different levels should be adopted, and how they should be monitored and evaluated. And this legislation is developed by the government and soon should come to the parliament. Parliament should play a more active role, we believe, and the committees should use more efficiently the oversight and control function regarding the SDG agenda. Next slide. So taking into account all those things, all those ideas that we already have, we also have some plan. Here is just the key pillars from the plan. We have the roadmap I mentioned already, but the very important things that we mentioned for ourselves, so is the language of main accepted targets and indicators will be adapted so that it actually reflects